Well, thank you so much, Rabbi Josh, for holding us together in such uncertain times, along with Natalie's tech expertise. I'm so grateful. And Jody, may you feel your dad's love as we sit, and may his light continue to guide your path. So as always, it is such a joy to see you all, to see your faces, and to be with you to share our practice together. I love to imagine that every time I sit, I have the chance to bring a little bit more shalom into the world. And so together we multiply that shalom by however many people we are, however many souls, not only now in this moment, but all those who will join us and sit with us with this particular meditation and other meditations into the future. And I think it's a beautiful and powerful thing that in a world teeming with conflict and pain, we have the privilege of bringing a little bit more shalom into the world together. So thank you for joining me. So we're going to begin sitting. Your eyes can be open or closed or anywhere in between. And just take a moment to check in with your body, to move in any kind of way that's going to allow you to create a little bit more space for your breath as we create a little bit more stillness. So maybe some gentle ankle rolls or a gentle seated twist. And when you feel called to slow down the motion, we sense our connection to the earth, fully embody plugging into our seat. And take some deep cleansing breaths. Signaling to our body that we're safe, that we're okay. And allow your breath to find a natural and steady rhythm. Just a supple breath pattern that I find really grounding is just sort of even inhalation and even exhalation. So breathing in and breathing out. If it's comfortable, you may want to place a hand gently on your heart, or even sometimes I place my opposite fingers on my wrists and just notice your pulse, your heart beating. Proof of your aliveness. We take a moment to bear witness to our capacity to be present to our experience. And it's not always pleasant to be in the present. So however you're showing up in this moment, allow. Just allow. I invite you to thank yourself for the discipline of showing up to your practice, and also offering gratitude for each one of us showing up exactly as we are in this beautiful felt and embodied reminder that we are not alone. Take one more deep breath. And feel free to open your eyes if you close them. So, friends, we are deep in the Exodus narrative, the story we tell every year at the Passover Seder, the story of our liberation. And in this week's Torah portion, God sends the 8th and 9th plagues, but Pharaoh still refuses to release our people from their slavery. And God subsequently tells Moshe that the 10th plague will be the killing of the firstborn Egyptians. And also that each Israelite home is to slaughter a lamb and spread the blood on their doorposts to protect their own firstborn. So I would actually love to highlight an aspect of the 9th plague, along with these instructions for how the Israelites are supposed to eat the lamb, sort of in conversation with one another, and suggest that they have something to offer us as we prepare to continue sitting together in meditation. So I'd love to look at the text with you. Thank you, Natalie. So we have this verse, Exodus 10:23, again, focusing on the plague of darkness. And the text reads, "They did not see one another. No person rose above his lowest self for 3 days." Okay, we don't actually know exactly what this word lowest self, mitachtav, means. Most commentators suggest that it means that no person got up from their seat for 3 days, meaning it was so dark that no one moved. But what if we read this instead as no one got off their tachat, their tush, okay, to help anyone else? So the 9th plague may be taken to be one of total disregard for their neighbors. Until then, we might imagine that the Egyptians still cared for one another, even if they had little regard for their Hebrew slaves. But after the hail and the locusts, when there was no green thing left to eat, they became so desperate that there was no longer any caring for one another. They didn't see each other's suffering. And as such, they refused to get off their tush to help alleviate each other's pain and suffering in any way. So this plague actually describes sort of the literal and figurative darkness, that people couldn't see each other's pain and then wouldn't make a move to help even if they could. So how do we fend off such a plague? Let's look at another verse from later in the Parsha. If the household, and here we're referring to the instructions for the Israelites to slaughter a lamb, each one per family. If the household is too small to eat the lamb, he and a neighbor close to his house, in an overlapping of souls, shall cover the lamb. So again, here the Hebrew is a little bit obscure. B'michsat, this kind of covering, nefashot. So again, most medieval commentators understand the verse to say, if the household is too small for a lamb, let it share with a neighbor who dwells nearby in proportion to the number of people. So you'll contribute for the lamb according to essentially how much your household will eat. And michsat therefore refers to the number of people and portioning out the lamb in accordance with that. But what if we understand it quite literally, that if you don't have enough people in your household to consume a whole lamb, you should sort of cover for each other and share your lamb with those who can also benefit from this invitation. Sort of eating the lamb in community. And I think that this is sort of just an example of how we create chavura, kila, how we create community. It doesn't just happen. It comes from sharing. It comes from caring for one another, and remembering that our individual liberation, each one of our own journeys to freedom, is tied up with our collective liberation. So, how can we use these two verses to inspire us in our sit? So, I'm going to share one more short text, a very famous story from the Kutzker Rabbi. The Kutzker explained, when it is winter and it's freezing cold, there are two things one can do. One can build a fire, or one can wrap oneself in a fur coat. In both cases, the person is warm. But when one builds a fire, all who gather round will also be warmed. With the fur coat, the only one who is warmed is the one who wears the coat, and it's the same for spiritual warmth. Thanks, Natalie. You can take the text down. So friends, I want to invite us to build a fire together and offer each other some spiritual warmth as we sit and share our virtual or metaphorical lamb. And I want to invite us to sort of get off our tushies by getting on our tushies, to sensitize ourselves to each other's, to our own pain and to each other's pain, so that we don't have to sit alone in the darkness. Okay. So find your seat once again in this energetic getting off of our tush to sit back onto our tush, with an awareness of all of those who are sitting with us now and in the days ahead. Your eyes can be open or closed or anywhere in between. Just take a deep breath to sense your belonging to this moment, to this community. Take a moment to energetically breathe into the front of the heart. And into the back of the heart. And I invite you to consider that this heart space is in fact bigger than your own personal heart. We're all part of this collective beating heart. And just as we feel our own individual aliveness and our collective aliveness, we soften our hearts into the knowing of our own tsuris, our own troubles, and our collective tsuris, our collective troubles. Can we hold ourselves and each other in a quality of rachamim, mercy and graciousness? I invite you to sense the warmth that comes from the fire of connection and awareness that we're building together. And to imagine that it's a fire that is glowing but not overwhelming. And that each one of us can tend the fire with our own breath. As we continue to sit for a couple more minutes in silence, I invite you to continue paying attention to how we can breathe together with this spirit of generosity, dedicating our breath to one another, to the spirit of well-being in ourselves and towards each other. So we'll continue to sit, and I'll bring us back with the sound of my voice. Hine matov umanayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov umanayim shevet achiot gam yachad. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים שבת אחים גם יחד. Begin to deepen your breath. I invite you to place one hand onto your heart, and into our hands and our hearts we place gratitude for the gift of coming together to sit and to breathe and to be and to heal and to offer each other warmth, sharing our energy and spirit as we all continue on this path towards greater liberation. And as we move into the day and the days ahead and the new month, may we remember that we are never truly alone. When we are cold, may we remember there is a fire we can draw near and tend with our breath. And when it's dark, may we be reminded not to sit back and suffer, but rather to find our way to others, even if all we can do is share each other's pain and bear witness to each other's truth. How good it is that we can sit here together as a family in peace. Turn it over to you, Josh.
So much, Jenny. Beautiful set. I hope you can stay for some conversation and reflection with Rabbi Jenny Solomon in a minute. Right now, we're going to have a chance to say Kaddish, and we also, before we do that, we want to mention again, thanks to Jody Beater for sponsoring today's set in memory of, on the Yortzeit of her father, Seymour. And so we'll include him, obviously, in our Kaddish today. If there's anybody else you were holding in mind or heart today, be remembering on the anniversary of a death or otherwise, you can enter their name. We'll put the text, Natalie will put the text of the Kaddish, Mourner's Kaddish on the screen, and you're welcome to unmute and join me in reciting Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitgadash Shemei Rabba
Amen.
V'alma v'ra chirutei v'yalich malchutei B'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei b'chol Beit Yisrael Ba'agala v'zman kariv v'imru V'hei Shmei Rabba
Rabba,
Mevorach Amen. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitavod v'yitalem v'yithalal Shmei Yisrael Tehillah Birchata v'shirata v'tishbachim v'nechemata v'miran ba'alma v'imru Yehi Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya B'chaim Aleinu v'al Kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. Oseh Shalom Limramav v'yaseh Shalom Aleinu Yisrael v'al Kol Yoshvei Tevel
Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Right. Thank you, everybody. So we'll bring Jenny back. And okay. Thank you so much. If you have a question, please feel welcome to put it in the chat, just with question in all caps so we can see it easily. That helps us out. And Jenny, that was a beautiful contrast that you painted between the so the creative interpretation of the plague of darkness and not being able to get off your tuchus, right? But the inability maybe to share, right? And then contrasting that with with the Seder night, where we're encouraged to share and to mix. Um, and I'm wondering about for you, just right now, with a lot of change, a lot of division, a lot of things that are happening very quickly, in this country anyway. Um, how are you trying to how are you finding that teaching showing up for you?
Yeah. I am really leaning into sharing sort of the intangibles, talking to friends, listening to friends, this ability that we all have to sit together, to gather. Those things are really giving me strength. And it's so obvious to me in this moment how little control we have over
Mhm.
so many things, um, other people, systems, structures, timing. So the part that I do have some control over is my own generosity, both with myself, like reminding myself that I can rest a little more, or I can listen a little more, or I can spend a little more time with a friend. Um, and then also, just with generosity of spirit.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, and there's some conversation about that. Like I see Mir's question is sort of related about concrete examples of ways people can spiritually build a fire to communally warm up. I think you're sort of pointing us in that direction. Um, uh, and oh, there's a clarifying question that looks like Susan has is confusion about who didn't get off there
Mm,
to see their pain. It was the Egyptians or the enslaved. They were all
yeah.
in darkness. So you want to answer that one?
Well, sure. In the picture that I was painting, my understanding of the text was referring to the Egyptians who were experiencing the plague of darkness, and
And
didn't.
specifically, actually, the text says that the Israelites had light in their
Yes,
home, right?
yes.
And so, which might have been also a manifestation of the same sort of ability to reach beyond,
Right.
maybe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and then Rana, your question's on brand. I knew you were going to ask this question. For whom is the warmth of our fire intended? It is far easier to share with a kindred soul. How do we learn to share with those whose intentions we believe are wrong?
Mm,
Do we kill the firstborn before we reach liberation? Right?
mm.
Not avoiding the tough question there, Rana. So, Rabbi, what, how do you want to respond to that one?
I don't know. I think I think we start with ourselves. We start with um, feeling some warmth within ourselves for ourselves. I think it is so natural then to reach outside of ourselves to the kindred spirits and to perhaps where emunah, faith comes into play, is this kind of trusting that the light we radiate, the warmth, the generosity, the compassion will continue to be transmitted um, in all places. Um, I guess that's where we suspend disbelief a little bit.
Mhm.
Um,
Hmm.
what are your thoughts, Josh?
Um, I think that uh, you were sort of gesturing at it before. I call it serenity praying it, right? Um, Being mindful of the things we can control and the things that we can't.
Yeah.
Um, and there are things that we can influence, I think like many other people, I spent a good chunk of yesterday calling my elected officials. Um, and that's part of the process, and it's part of using our voice. And there's a discernment process that's always really, really important um, to ask ourselves, are we catastrophizing, right? And and where are we actually? What place is it and what time is it actually? Um, and then just even being present for, being present in that moment. I think that's where, our practice can be so valuable. I noticed, I mean, I was looking at the numbers today. I need to go check. My hunch is that our attendance is up a bit today relative to what it historically is on a Wednesday. And I wouldn't be surprised at that. And I think that, people intuitively get, sort of what you were saying, that like, we're hungry for both for community and for there are things that are within our control. And our presence with our breath, our mindfulness in our experience, our presence in our experience, those are all things that we can do and need to do to support ourselves. I saw somebody very in a clever way, a friend of mine on Facebook who's a pretty far left socialist, Yiddishist, who said kind of humorously, he's like, so I think that the leftists need to teach the liberals, about direct action, and the liberals need to teach the leftists about compartmentalization. And I said, and I didn't respond to that, but my inner response to it was, you could call it compartmentalization, you can call it mindfulness about wherever you are in the spectrum, and you can be not on that spectrum, but just to be present with our experience and not allowing our minds to spin stories,
Yeah.
but just to be here right now and be here with you and with all of you and with whoever we're with. Yeah, that's a long response.
Yeah. No, that resonates for me as well.
Yeah. Um, there's some good conversation going on in the chat here as well. Um, okay. Yeah, just reading through here. Um, Elon, I think it's Elon, as the show tune, "No one is alone from Into the Woods," and
Mm,
part of the human heart from Once on This Island. Um, and it just, I mean, that was also in that towards the end, you were talking about like not being alone. It's interesting to like think about the reading that you offered of um, the darkness plague and of the Seder as manifestations of really, the instruction from the very beginning of creation, Lo tov heyota adam levado. It's not good for people to be alone,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to acknowledge, I mean, my own experience of loss is that there's a part of every loss in which I do feel alone. Like there's nobody else. There's one way of feeling in that moment. Like there's nobody else who understands this and experiencing this as I am right now. And that's true. That's true. And I think that there are other parts of myself that know that there are people who are experiencing a particular loss or some other shared loss, that do have some understanding. There's a universality of loss, as just as there is a particularism. And I think affirming that there is sort of a unique quality to each particular loss, but there is simultaneously a universal experience that we can lean into. I feel that in my meditation practice. I just feel reminded that, like, as human beings, we're all experiencing, of course, these unique experiences, but also the same stuff. And I find that really strengthening.
Yeah. I'm seeing there's a wonderful, Lori points out, and there's value in also sitting on your tuchus, right? Like that's what we're doing, right? So, right? Don't just do something, sit there,
Yeah, yeah, that's so true.
Um, but I'm also looking at Raquel's note here. How can we stop being for those who are feeling despondent in this moment? I think the Exodus story is nothing if not that story, right? People who were in far worse shape, frankly, than our own people, and b'chol dor vador, in every generation, right? We experience liberation. I think digging deeper into what liberation, to the excavating some of the layers of liberation, it could be part of what we're doing here, for sure. And I also want to just say, like, I've seen a couple of notes here, people who are in the LGBTQ community, who are in other communities, maybe the immigrant communities who are being targeted. Um, I'm feeling a sense of real vulnerability right now. We posted something on our Instagram channel in IJS, but this is always a community where you should feel welcome, and I want to say that from my own position, that anybody who comes here in a spirit of curiosity and openness is welcome in this community, and so this hopefully can be a source of strength and light and some and support for you. So yeah, I'll say that as well.
Amen, amen.
Um,
And I like the idea that even, by sitting on our tushes and sitting still, like even there we have the capacity to be generous. And in the same way that, we can get going, be still and get going, we can do nothing and still give of ourselves. I just believe that.
yeah, yeah. I think kindness matters all the time, and it matters, even more now. And I think that one of the things, you'll hear this if you listen to my podcast next week. You'll hear this next week, but I'll offer this since we're talking about the Exodus. One of the narratives that's been, I think, really I've heard a lot since October 7th is the words from the Haggadah, the Hisha Amda, right? That passage, the essence of which is it wasn't one person, right? That tried to lachalotenu, to destroy us. Elisha b'chol dor vador omdim oleinu lachalotenu. Every generation, they rise up to try to destroy us. V'hakadosh baruch hu matzilenu miyadam, and the Holy Blessed One rescues us from that. And I've heard a lot of, in every generation, there's constant, Jew hatred. We're always feeling victimized, and we tell ourselves it's like this is like a centerpiece of the Seder. And I would offer a neo-Hasidic reread of that. Lechalotenu is the word there, right? To destroy, but that comes from kol. It comes from everything, right? That it essentializes, it totalizes, it catastrophizes. And so maybe another way of reading it would be along the lines, Jenny, that you were offering today, is in every generation we sense these forces that within ourselves and externally, they're real, but within ourselves that seem to that spin a story of it's all over, right? It's all over. It's all lost. We catastrophize. John Kabat-Zinn calls it total catastrophe living, right? Um, and that happens in every generation. V'hakadosh baruch hu, but the Holy Blessed One, Matzilenu mi'adam, gives us the ability for that not to be the story we have to tell ourselves, right? We don't have to catastrophize, actually. There's always a possibility for changing the narrative. And I think that that's just such an important practice from a Jewish mindfulness point of view. And that you really were teaching us, I think, Jenny, today is like, that's within our control.
Yasher koach. And every time we sit and take another deep breath, we're invited into literally, like, our breath is sending, our brain is sending a message to our nervous system. Actually, you're okay. You're okay. And the catastrophe we are fearing or anticipating, it's not, it's not, hasn't happened. And we can save ourselves perhaps with God's help.
Yeah, and others.
Yes.
So, all right. Jenny, thank you so much for your teaching today and for leading us. Thanks everybody for being part of the set. We'll leave this open for another, half a minute here so folks can download the chat because I know everybody likes to do, not everybody, a lot of people like to do that. And we'll be back tomorrow, same time and channel with another great edition. And I think tomorrow actually is Sarah Waxman from At the Well in honor of Rosh Chodesh. So we'll wish you a Chodesh Tov, everybody, and we'll see you again when you can join us. Take care.